Well, my next guest is really a champion, and I am so honored to have with us today Eugene "Red" McDaniel, Captain of the United States Navy, and he's authored a book. In fact, it's being re-released. There is the new picture of it right there, Scars and Stripes, the true story of one man's courage facing death as a POW in Vietnam. And boy, this is terrific. Captain, are you there?
Yes, Perry. Good to be with you.
God bless you, my friend, and thank you. Obviously, you've gotten some good response, and you're reissuing the book. What motivated you?
Well, I was approached by WorldNet Daily and asking to re-release the book, and it's a story that transcends the ages. It shows that how God can take a person who's down and out and lift him up, and your faith is the one thing the enemy can't take from you. Because as a prisoner of war, we lost everything we had except the will to believe, and we hung on to that one core belief and found that God's grace was sufficient.
All right, you were a POW, what, 6 years?
6 years, yes. 2,117 days.
Wow. At what point did you realize that you may not come home?
Well, I always believed that I'd be coming home. I was an athlete in high school and college, and because I think to win, you've got to think positively. And I did the same thing in captivity, but I never lost hope. It was hard to hang on for 6 years, but we had a great communication system with our prison system, and we had some great leadership.
I don't know if this is a fair scenario or parallel, Captain, but it would appear after this election that maybe America is a POW to itself. We re-elected an administration that doesn't seem to be very favorable of the military. Certainly isn't favorable towards the Christian God, and the list goes on and on and on. What can you say?
Well, Perry, the leadership today is not worthy of the sacrifice that I was willing to make in 1967. We went to Vietnam believing in the cause and threw our heart and soul into it. And if I had a son today serving under this leadership, I'm not sure how I would advise him. I've come to the conclusion that the leadership of this country is not deserving of the sacrifices our sons and daughters are willing to make for this country.
That's an incredible statement. So what do we do? What do we do to not only retain the sense of the heroic effort that is needed to return America back to where it was and what it should be under God, and at the same time, we're going to have to endure the next 4 years. I mean, we're in for a real shaking. It's just hard for me. I'm still having a hard time getting my brain around what happened here.
Well, we all are. The president, to win re-election, used divide and conquer, which is something the enemy tried to do with us in captivity. Tried to divide rich against poor, black against white, just tried to divide the nation, and it was successful in winning. But I think what the nation needs is to return to the basic core values of this country. That is belief in God, which is what the nation was founded on. And until we do that, we're just going to continue down this black hole. And I don't see any end game right now.
All right. Pluralism being what it is and political correctness being what it is, do you think that the faith community that does believe in the Christian God has the fortitude to stand up and fight, so to speak, from a spiritual dimension to see America restored? Well,
I certainly do, and I think a lot of other Americans do, but we Christians are a diminishing breed, and we have to reverse that trend. And I guess the way we do it is through the young people of this country, and that's why my book transcends the ages. It shows that you can kind of pick up the pieces and build a new life and get through anything that comes down the pike. It's because life is a series of hardships, ups and downs. You're either coming out of a crisis or you're getting ready to go into a crisis.
Yeah.
And for me, it was my faith that enabled me to get through those 6 years of captivity. Absolute blind faith that someday I'm going to be able to come home, and I hung on to that one thing that the enemy couldn't take. That was my belief in God.
That's remarkable. Again, the book is entitled Scars and Stripes. It's a WorldNet Daily classic, and it's being re-released, a 35th anniversary edition. There's a picture up there on the screen, and put out by WND Books. I'm sure you can get it at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, so get a copy of it. Captain, let me ask you this. We are now looking at potential military cuts. Your feelings on that?
Well, I'm very much opposed to that because when I served back 30-plus years ago, we had about 2.4 million in uniform. Today we have about 1.37 in uniform, and yet our commitments continue to expand. And we've seen the Arab Spring in the Middle East, which is spiraling out of control. In Syria, we can see problems with Iran. And I'm very concerned about the freedom that I've enjoyed for my 81 years. I'm not sure where we're headed from here unless we begin to turn this great nation around. This once great nation around.
Well, well, you know, we're all sitting back watching, well, with the fiscal cliff coming at us, you know that the president's going to throw the Defense Department and military cuts on the table as part of the deal. And in this volatile world in which we're living in, it just seems like that's the craziest thing we could possibly do.
Well, I agree because the world is still a very dangerous place. And when I commanded my aircraft carrier, we had around 600 Navy vessels. Today we have less than 300, and yet the threats are still coming at us from all different directions. And I think I'd rather be strong and never need it than the other way around. And right now, if the cuts are implemented, we will have the smallest military since 1935, and that's not good.
All right. If we have those cuts, but we have advanced in technology, can you comment on that? How do you think our technical capabilities are these days?
Well, certainly we've improved technically. We have the drones, which can do a lot of things we couldn't do many years ago, but you still need the boots on the ground. And we've withdrawn from Iraq, which is now aiding Iran. We're withdrawing from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's really disturbing to a lot of people that we see America becoming a weak nation.
Do you have any feel or have any correspondence of what the morale is in the military these days?
Well, the morale is good because the men and women who volunteer, we have an all-volunteer force, and the men and women who volunteer are willing to pay the price. But I'm afraid that, one of these days when we get to the point that people aren't going to join the military because of their concern about the leadership, we're going to have to go to a draft. And I think that's where we're headed.
All right, so any comments on our lack of support of Israel under this administration?
Well, certainly Israel has been one of our great allies through the years, and I've been very concerned about the lack of attention that Israel receives, because when Iran says they will obliterate Israel from the face of the earth, that's a very strong statement. And yet the Iranians are still developing the fuel they need for nuclear weapons, and we're doing very little to stop that. And now we've got Iraq, which we just left, assisting Iran in Syria, and that it just doesn't all add up.
All right. So how do you, as a former POW that spent 6 years with the only thing left in your pocket, so to speak, was your faith in God, and that became, quite frankly, your exit out of the captivity, and where you see it happening to the world and our country, how do you weigh in your eschatology in all of this and still stay strong as a patriot and say to Americans, stay at it, if in fact we may be entering into a very biblical state?
Well, Perry, I have 3 siblings and 9 grandchildren and now a great-grandchild, and I'm very concerned about their future. And I think back into my captivity, those long days and long nights. I remember the books that we're talking about, Scars and Stripes, was built around an escape attempt that we had in 1969. And I went through some very brutal treatment and was bent in ways the body is not intended to bend, beaten daily with a fan belt. But there came a point in that torture room, the only thing I had left was a will that says, hang on. But I learned a valuable lesson in that torture. I learned that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is simply the presence of faith. And with that faith, I think any American, man or woman, can survive anything that comes down the pike. You might never get over something, but with faith, you'll get through it. And that's why, to me, it was my faith that enabled me to hang on all those years. And I pray that my grandchildren will have that, and so far they do, and that's pleasing to me. But when you look around at your neighbors, that's not always the case.
Well, that's so beautifully said. Let me encourage you folks, get a copy of this book. It's being re-released by WorldNet Daily. It's entitled Scars and Stripes by Eugene "Red" McDaniel. He's a captain of the U.S. Navy, and it's a true story of his courage facing death as a POW, being tortured like he just mentioned. And I think you'll find it to be a great faith-building book. Captain, before we let you go, any closing thoughts on just Christians in general during this time? I think so many people came out of the election kind of going, oh no, now what do we do? And yet I have a sense of peace about it, in the sense that it provides a great opportunity to preach the gospel.
Well, absolutely, I agree with that. And I think when we as a nation return to the things that made this nation so great, that we have individual rights, we have a God that transcends everything, because God's power is His love is without limit, and His grace is without measure. And when we have that, we need to hang on to that and bring this nation forward. But right now we're stuck in a quagmire, and I don't see that. But I'm doing what I can to advance our nation, because I still think our greatest years are yet ahead, but we've got to go forward as a team.
All right. Thank you, my friend. God bless you and your family. Merry Christmas to you, and the best in the new year.